The largest creatures on Earth live in the ocean. Their sheer size has always triggered our imagination. In murky waters or inaccessible places, we ignored their true nature and created legends. Today, scientists try to understand them, to go beyond the myths. But stranded or fished creatures offer a poor glimpse into their world. So how can we decipher their underwater secrets without altering their behavior?
Venturing below the surface is a first step into a different world.
One man has dedicated his life to this quest. He offers marine biologists around the world a unique way of approaching the animals they study. He freedives. This aquanaut travels beneath the surface, using only the air trapped in his lungs.
I suggest the encounter, but the initiative comes from the animal.
He approaches the giants of the sea to photograph, identify, or tag them.
I usually work with scientists on missions which they could not carry out, other than with the assistance of a freediver. A concrete example is the tagging of sharks.
For scientists, he has become the eyes of the Big Blue. But what led him there? Who is this link between myth and knowledge? Can he reconcile us with our ancestral fears of the unknown?
My name is Fred Buyle, and I've been a freediver since, well, the age of 4 or 5. I lived by the sea on the coast of Belgium during the first years of my life. I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time alone, playing outside. As far as I can remember, I've always wanted to go and explore under the sea surface. I had only ever been on the sea, and I would watch what was just below the surface, hoping to see something. I still have this naive vision of the ocean. I always hope that a completely new species of animal will appear right in front of me, that I'll be the first to witness a new behavior. To enjoy the ocean, you need to be very open-minded, and a bit naive, I think. I inherited my father's love for the sea. He always had a boat. When I was born, he was building one in the yard. We used to spend several months a year on a sailboat. He really passed on to me this passion for the sea. He wasn't a diver himself, but he made me want to go out on the water, and I transformed this into a desire to go underwater. Those sailing trips gave me the opportunity to spot my first sea giants. I quickly turned to books to get more information, even before I could read. But just with the illustrations, I would tell myself all sorts of stories. Those books allowed me to travel. Among them, there was a very old book bound in leather and written in Latin in the 17th century by one of the first Italian naturalists. Even his name was an invitation to travel, Ulysses Aldrovandi. I read this book eagerly for years. It was centuries old. And it gave me the vision that the ancients had of the underwater world. Some fish were known. We have pretty detailed descriptions. The drawings and the prints are very close to what can be observed. Take a sea bream, for example. It was described very precisely. For some marine animals, however, naturalists only knew small parts of their bodies, such as the jaw or the rostrum. From there, they tried to imagine the animal to which those parts belonged. That's how we ended up with a bestiary of supernatural creatures and animals looking very different than they do in reality. I think those old books led to some vocations. They enabled men to master their fear of the sea and inspired them to go out and unveil its mysteries. That's what the Aldrovandi did to me. It set me dreaming. In Belgium, imaginary monsters have always been part of the landscape. I was fascinated by the gargoyles. There are an incredible variety of them, and no two are alike. A legend even says that the gargoyles start screaming when evil approaches. I suspected that just like in those old books, the creatures were inspired by real animals. But as Belgium was no longer a wilderness, these creatures necessarily came from the sea.
For the Belgian people, the North Sea is an extension of their flat country, a window to freedom, and a reservoir of surprises.
One winter morning, the ocean introduced me to one of its mysteries. On the beach near my house, a storm had washed up a giant. I had never imagined I could come that close to a whale. No recent book explained the stranding of whales. Yet my old bestiary mentioned them. I could recognize a whale that had a square forehead and a side vent. Just like in the illustration, it only had teeth in its lower jaw. And what teeth! My book called it the monstrous whale. Later on, I learned that it was called a sperm whale and that it dived very deep. Its skin was covered with mysterious round-shaped scars. These were like hieroglyphs that needed to be deciphered. Standing alongside that decaying carcass, it was as if the dead whale put a spell on me. I was hooked. Now, not only did I want to go underwater, But I wanted to explore the bottom of the sea and enter the world of the sperm whale. After that, I saw other cetaceans stranded on the Belgian coast. It made me both sad and intrigued. When I was making my first steps as a scientist, I really wanted to learn, and that curiosity made me grow. Over the years, my father's sailboat would venture further and further out to sea. From the surface, I only saw a few animals glowing, but at least they were alive. Strangely, we always came across these animals where the water was 1,000 meters deep, close to the islands. To the Azores, for example. During our long travels, each stop was an opportunity to understand how men interacted with their environment, how they exploited its wealth.
The Azores are indeed a rich land. Sperm whales are part of the culture. A very ancient culture that has been well preserved. Sperm whales, fishing, and volcanoes, that's their identity. And yet the islanders have not always been kind to sperm whales. Up until the 1980s, sperm whales were hunted and cut up for their fat. Since then, oil and public opinion have transformed these whaling stations into museums. The hunters have become gamekeepers and naturalists. They found out that sperm whales eat huge squid, and sometimes found them dying on the surface.
The suction marks on their skin, that could be from them. To find out, I had to go below the surface. When I started going into the water with my snorkel to observe fish, the first thing I did was, of course, to try to identify them. I had seen them in the book and recognized them in the water. But what was different was their behavior. Because in the book, the fish are described. You see a plate describing a fish, but you just don't know what it does. I could spend many minutes observing a parrotfish. I knew it was a parrotfish. I could recognize the animal from the book, but I had no idea what it did. So I would watch it, watch how it moved, and that would keep me busy for hours. Those animals that were flat and well described in the book, very nicely drawn, they would come to life. It was really surprising because they did things I didn't expect. So that added a whole dimension to the animal.
The young Fred Buyle's choice is made. His life will be dedicated to the underwater world and its creatures. Fred is back home in Belgium, diving in cold and murky waters. To make his childhood dream come true, he starts training to become a freediver in a lake.
When you first start to freedive, the most difficult part is to acquire the technical skills, a good swimming technique, and the ability to really relax. Once the technical aspects are mastered, you have to work on your physical condition. In freediving, there's an interesting connection between the technical, physical, and mental skills. You go down into the depths, a hostile, cold, and dark environment. So it's a bit against our nature, and you have to really try to put that out of your mind. After years of experience, that comes naturally. But in the beginning, it's perhaps the hardest thing. After that, of course, the mental capacity takes over. And just like in other activities, when you reach a certain level, all athletes will pretty much have the same technical and physical capacities. What makes the difference is the mind. Freediving is a sport in which the mind is really essential, because you're dealing with humanity's primal fears. Being mentally flexible and able to deal with that type of emotion will make a big difference and allow you to progress. It was a time in my life during which I realized that human beings have no limits other than those that they set for themselves. But it's also important to stay within one's limit. It's also a time to learn about oneself, about what one is capable of enduring and of achieving.
In a few years, Fred Buyle will beat all the previous freediving records in fresh water. But the records were not important to him, merely a pretext to meet the creatures of this dark world. catfish. They can measure up to 8 feet and weigh over 220 pounds. These fearful giants had already been identified by Aldrovandi. They will remain fleeting memories, obscure ghosts. But Fred's choice is very clear. With this tough training in murky waters, diving in the clear waters of the ocean will be easy. He can now test himself against the world's best freedivers.
It's 7:40, official time. First official time at 7.
Tous les sondeurs éteints.
Il est 7h40, premier top officiel dans 15 minutes pour le premier ouvreur. Monsieur Pointu, 1 minute.
If you analyze a fairly deep free dive, it can be broken down into several phases. The first phase is one of relaxation and introspection on the surface, to be as relaxed as possible. The key to freediving is being relaxed, so you have to breathe very slowly, slow down the whole body, to leave with a heart rate as low as possible.
Fred Buyle, c'est à toi. Ils sont là, il y en a là et il y en a l'autre qui est par là-bas. 1 minute. Happy. 20. 10.
Then you duck dive to sink below the surface.
3, 2, 1, official top. One, two, three, 4.
The first meters are, I won't say violent, but they require some strength to overcome the buoyancy. So you first fin quite energetically, and then slow the finning down gradually as you go down. Everything slows down. At that point, you are very focused on the dive, trying to empty your mind and only concentrate on sensations. Around 20-25 meters, you gradually slow down your fin movements and completely stop around 30 to 35 meters. Then comes the most enjoyable part of the deep dive, when you slide towards the sea bottom. So you stop moving your fins, just concentrating on clearing your ears, emptying your mind, and sliding 1 meter per second towards the targeted depth. That's the best part. Very pleasant. You have to make pressure your ally. Every 10 meters, you have 1 kilo per square centimeter of additional pressure. That's a lot. And there's huge pressure on the entire surface of your body. If you fight against this pressure, you can't win. One of the keys to deep free diving is accepting the pressure. You can't think about the depth. You can't think that there are 60, 80, or 100 meters of water above your head. When you reach the bottom and turn around, you enter the most difficult phase of the dive because you start over again with a negative buoyancy. So you feel very heavy at the bottom, and you're going to need to move your fins very energetically during the first 15 or 20 meters of the ascent. As you get closer to the light and the surface, the water becomes warmer, and that lets you know more or less where you are, even without looking at the depth gauge. Then when you reach the last 15 or 20 meters of the ascent, you've got to try to relax as much as possible. At that moment, you really lack oxygen, so you need to slow down your movements as much as possible and use the buoyancy to carry you up towards the surface.
En vue, 3 minutes.
For the next decade, Fred continues to dive from these makeshift rafts, where freedivers watch each other with envy.
Freediving is still a relatively new sport, so there is great potential to break new records. I think we haven't reached our limits yet. In constant weight freediving, I think we can probably reach 140 meters.
To increase their power, some competitors use monofins. Every year, they gather for an international race towards the depths.
It's a school that teaches patience and humility. There are ups and downs. It's an extremely concentrated way of life. It's a time during which you learn a lot about yourself, about what you are capable of enduring and of achieving. During this period, I met people who are very important in my life and with whom I still spend a lot of time.
On a vécu des aventures sportives
We
exceptionnelles
experienced
parce qu'on a
amazing
été d'abord
sporting
concurrents,
adventures because we were competitors,
alors qu'on s'entraînait
even though
ensemble.
we trained together.
En fait, c'est pas un
Fred isn't
alpiniste,
a
c'est un
freediver,
aérien.
he's a sea
Un de ces
creature, one of
êtres
those
humains qui, à
human
un
beings who
moment,
could have
aurait
had
pu
a
se
heel
faire greffer une
transplanted
branche
here
ici et
and
vivre
live
sous.
underwater.
Fred is one of the wise people in freediving. He's someone who had and still has a certain distance compared to others. He's also closer to nature.
Ce qui nous a amené à la
What
compétition
brought
de
us to
plongeon
free
en apnée,
diving
en fait, avec
competitions with Fred
c'est notre
is our
amour
unconditional
inconditionnel
love
de la
for the
mer
sea
et
and the quest.
une quête
The spiritual quest,
spirituelle, une
the
quête
sporting
sportive, une
quest,
quête physique,
physical quest,
une quête
and a very simple
toute
quest.
simple. Nous sommes
We
des
are
gens qui
people
avons
who want to
envie de
live for the sea,
vivre de la
with the
mer,
sea,
pour la
by
mer
the
et
sea,
avec la
and
mer
in
et
the
à la mer.
sea.
You really learn a lot about yourself, what you're capable of enduring, of achieving. But one day, during a free dive, during the World Championships in 2000, right in the middle of the dive, at around 35 meters, I turned around halfway. Because I thought, what am I doing here? I felt I was doing the same thing over and over again. That was a turning point for me. I stopped because I was fed up. Freediving competitions are not very popular, and you need to deal with many things yourself. At one point, I said to myself, that's enough. I knew I had other projects that were taking form, relying on a more natural freediving practice, more in relation with the environment, and that implied spending more time with the animals and exploring the ocean.
Fred decides to settle in the middle of the Atlantic, in the Azores, where his passion for diving began.
When I went to the Azores, I took the books I had read during my childhood, my illustrations. This was very important to me.
His thirst for knowledge could only be satisfied by books, especially bestiaries, his own and those of a library.
Then I did some more research. Books were a revelation to me. They were like companions. It's been a long journey, and they're still part of my world. When I plunged back into the old books and atlases, the prints took on a whole new meaning. After several years of freediving, I was able to understand the origin of the legendary sea monsters. Many were born from the navigators' observations, but they only observed the ocean from above the surface. Beneath the foam, the sea was a world of terror and fascination. Of course, it's hard to believe Jonas was swallowed and spit out by a so-called whale. I do not believe in coincidence. The invention of monsters always served a purpose. From several silhouettes glimpsed beneath the surface, sailors created myths. To boost the image of their trade, they invented sea serpents and mermaids. Fanciful descriptions of animals decaying or drifting ended up being transformed into extraordinary creatures. Strangely enough, from one map to the next, the same monsters appeared. They were inspired by real animals. They were much larger than humans and haunted the limits of the known world. Those strange descriptions gave way to much more detailed ones when naturalists were able to observe the giants of the sea at the edge of our world. Just like the dead or dying whales that I saw during my childhood in Belgium. Even today, scientists are still unable to put them back out to sea. But through the systematic study of creatures that are fished or stranded, they have progressively described, classified, and compared the anatomy of animals that inspired those legendary creatures. The humpback whale, for instance. Thanks to scientists, we now know it's a marine mammal, a baleen whale. In this way, the first naturalists progressively killed off the myths. But they knew almost nothing of the biology of these sea giants, because they rarely ventured out to sea. In the footsteps of these pioneers, we have been trying to learn more, to observe the living animals, and to take conservation measures if needed. It was about time. In less than a century, fishing has developed and become industrialized, and those we once called monsters are now being slaughtered before we even get a chance to discover more about them. The problem with sharks is that they are victims of overfishing, and that 75 million are killed each year, and this is all happening before we can study them and understand their behavior. I think we do things backwards. Some species may very well become extinct before we are even able to understand how they lived. This is not acceptable. What's certain is that the problem is human greed. For me, the only thing that will stop overfishing is when it will no longer be commercially viable. I think it's not realistic to believe in regulations or the enforcement of laws.
Is it possible for a lone freediver to take on these international fishing corporations and defend a silent population hidden beneath the ocean's surface?
I never know what tomorrow will bring. It's both scary and exciting.
By chance, Fred discovers a report by the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It points out that 40% of shark species are considered data deficient. This means that we don't have enough information about their biology to be able to assess the protection measures that need to be taken. Fred's future project takes shape. Why not use his skills as a freediver to bring back photo evidence and information about these sharks? He heads to South Africa, where many sharks are accessible to freedivers in shallow waters. Off these wild coasts stirred by cold currents and turbid waters, Fred joins a freediver named Steve Benjamin. He has discovered some little-known sharks described as data deficient by the IUCN. He calls them cow sharks.
So Fred, we're going to head down into this kelp forest over here, and we're going to swim across the channel to the kelp forest in the distance. You can see it there. Now we can find the cow sharks there. There may be a few, there may be quite a lot. It really depends on the day. And they get quite big, sort of 0.5 meter to 2.5 meters in length. So there might be some big sharks down there.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll swim to the kelp forest and go see what we can find. There can be quite a few, eh? In summer when the water gets really warm, you can get up to 30 or 40 at the same time.
At the same time?
In the same area. You only ever really see maybe 10 at a time.
With these first scientific expeditions, I realized that freediving brings about constant questioning. You always need to adjust. There are unexpected events to which you need to adapt.
The shallow waters lying in front of the kelp forest have a surprise in store. Cat sharks. This name designates sharks that are endemic to the South African coastal waters. They often fall victim to fishermen. The IUCN also considers this species at risk, but does not have enough data to determine the protective measures that need to be taken. Can Fred start a survey program with this elusive shark species? Unfortunately, these fish are too small and difficult to find to conduct a proper survey. His studies must focus on accessible marine animals of a considerably larger size. Animals that can potentially be dangerous to man, like cow sharks. He must go deeper to find them.
When I dive, I think there's always that search for inner peace. Especially with freediving, you have to be aware. I open my eyes and see if there are any animals. This phase is generally very comfortable. After a while, perhaps 10 seconds, you start to feel the need to breathe. If animals are around, or if something is going on, you either have a choice to continue your free dive, to extend it as much as possible, or if nothing is happening, you can go back to the surface and start preparing for a new dive.
If the freediver is dependent on the air trapped in his lungs to explore the sea depths, what advantage does he have compared to a diver with oxygen?
A freediver is extremely discreet, so it's much easier to get close to an animal, and also for the animal to approach us. The animal will come to us, and that obviously is the holy grail for a photographer or a cameraman. With sharks, you generally have to try to establish a relationship. Obviously, it can't be based on power, because we'd lose. But it's a little like playing cat and mouse. If you act like a prey, the shark will tend to get closer to you. But if you take up space in the water, he'll tend to backtrack. You can always try to find that type of balance.
These seven-gill sharks have a primitive appearance. They have remained unchanged since the age of the dinosaurs. Sadly, with our hooks and nets, we may wipe them out in only a few years. To achieve a census of animal populations, scientists often create photo identification catalogues. Fortunately, the skin of these sharks is spangled with distinctive black and white spots. It looks like each shark wears its own unique pattern. It could be a unique opportunity to complete a census of this sedentary shark population. To include each and every individual, Fred portrays all resident sharks at different periods of the year. He achieves his first contribution to the study of sharks. It's science in the making. Science relies on irrevocable proof. Without proof, there is nothing. While taking pictures of the shark's characteristic markings, Fred Buyle comes up with a hypothesis. How will it hold out when reviewed by South African shark specialist Megan McCord? Indeed, Fred's photo library is a unique testimony to the diversity of cow sharks and their individual differences. Unfortunately, these spots are not like our fingerprints. Thanks to captive animal studies, Megan McCord has found that their shape, distribution, and colors change with time, so that spots can't identify these sharks, which are known to live up to 49 years. Photo identification, however, has recently proved to be a reliable method for identifying another threatened species of shark. Whale sharks, the largest fish of all. Then cutting-edge software supports rapid identification using pattern recognition and photo management tools. Replicating the protocol on thousands of whale shark pictures, Fred could prove the added value of freediving for conservation projects. This is a risky bet. Can he really meet enough of these wide-ranging oceanic sharks?
It's possible to do something with the cow sharks, but with the whale shark, we could do something.
Definitely, and let me just grab the book. I actually want to show you.
Living on a shoestring, he plunges himself into the unknown.